Welcome to .NET Core 0 to Hero series, and this is Cartech. Last session we discussed Web API 0 to Hero series, and after that we .NET roadmap. We discussed .NET roadmap, and after that we segregated the 7 days plan, and we covered day 1 and day 2 and day 3 and day 4, and in the day 4 session we covered code first approach and entity framework, link queries, and catching, redis catching, distributed catching, and we covered some more topics of day 4, concurrency handling and transactions, conflict handling, and we covered the repository pattern and unit of work pattern, and we covered them catching, and we need to do an exercise with the Redis catching technique with the using of unit of work design pattern. That exercise anyway we'll do in this Sunday. Uh, we'll discuss day 5 concept. What are the concepts behind the day 5? And let's get into the video. And today our video is day 5 design patterns of architecture. First, what is the design patterns and what is architecture? Design pattern in any software language or any software application, we have some common design patterns is there, which means we need to use the design pattern. With that design pattern, if you build an application, uh, the application will work smoothly, and it will we can implementing while implementing also, if you are following that rules, after that deployment, we are not face so many bugs. And if you are facing any bugs, and uh, we need to identify easily if you are following with this all design patterns and solid principles. And let's discuss into first solid principles of our architectural. Solid principles are nothing but uh, it is solid principle in the name only. Each and every word in the behind the definition is there. Yes for singleton, and O for open and closed, and L for Lesko substitutive principle, and I for interface segregation, and D for dependency inversion. These are the principles of solid. These are the solid principles, and let's get into the more, like what is SRP, what is OCP, what is LSP, and what is ISP, and what is DIP. Sorry, we'll go to the into our five solid principle SRP. Yes, S stands for single responsibilities principle. It means a class should have only one reason to change, meaning it should not have single well-defined responsibility. Like if you are creating in a class, it means it means if after creating the class, if you wanted to change that class, the reason only one reason to change that class. Like if you are while creating a class also, it should be only one reason for creating that class. If you are doing any changes, we have one reason to one only one reason to change, that we'll called as a single responsibility principle. And we'll go to the in deep, like each class should have only one reason to change. A class should have only one job and one responsibility. Like if employee class is only responsible for employee, and there is no need to like contract employee and permanent employee, only employee, particular employee on name and common things that should be covered under the employee clause. The example, instead of user handling both data storage and email notification, to separate this user repository and email service. Okay, here good example has given. If user class handling both user class or employee class, both handling like data storage, like employee information and email notification. To separate this class, we need to like create a separate class email service and user repository. This is the best example of single responsibility principle. And next, open and closed principle. The software entities like example classes or module should have be open for extension but closed for modification. This promotes for idea extending functionality without altering existing code. It means classes and modules should have open for extension but closed for modification. It's nothing but it open the class or module. It's open for extension but closed for modification. We cannot do modify after once we create a module or entities, module or classes. But if you wanted to extend, we have an option to open. That is called as open and closed responsibility. We'll go in deep like open and closed software entries class should have open for extension but closed for modification. Instead of modifying existing code, you should extend it. Like instead of doing modification in that particular code, you should do extending that code. Example, use inheritance or interface to allow new functionality without modifying existing code. If the class is we created, if you wanted to implement any method with that using class with that particular class, you need to uh, inherit that class, or you need to create a interfaces, and in that interfaces you need to define the methods and implementing that class into any another child class. That we called as a open and closed principle. And next, Lisco substitute principle. Subtypes are a derived class must suitable for their base types. Subtypes subtypes are derived class must substitutable for base class without altering the correctness of the program. Derived class must substitutable of their base class. It nothing but derived class must substitutable for their base type without altering correct. Example, derived class, I am once again repeating, derived class must be substitutable for their base class without altering correctness. If in the derived class, it should be satisfied with the base class without altering any correctness. That is called as Lisco substitution principle. A derived class must be extend base class without breaking its behavior. Derived class must be extend a base class without breaking its behavior. Example, if rectangular is a base class and square is a subclass of subclass, should not break the expected behavior of rectangular. Should not break the expected behaving of rectangular. It means like square and rectangular both are a different class, but square class is a rectangular class is a base class and square class is a derived class. uh, Square class is a derived class should not break to the behavior of rectangular class. That is called as a Lisco substitution principle. ISP, interface segregation principle. What it stands for? Clients should not be forced to depend on interfaces they do not use. The principle encourages the creation of similar focus interface. It means like it means clients should not be forced depend on interface they do not use it. Like clients are don't depend on the interfaces. If you are not using any interface, uh, we don't need to use that interface. Not and that and unused interface we not forced to use depend interface. Should not be forced depend on interfaces they should not use. Instead of large interfaces, create smaller and similar ones, specific ones. Example, instead of worker interface with work, eat, sleep methods, split into the iWorkable or iEatable. Instead of large methods of in large members of large methods of interface, we need to segregate based accordingly, and we need to create sub interfaces. We should not force that interface. That is called as ISP. And the last and least, DIP, dependency inversion principle. higher level module Higher level modules not depend on the lower level modules. It means higher level it means like higher level module should not depend on the both should not depend on abstraction. Both should not depend on abstraction. Both should depend on abstraction. Use dependency injection to depend on interfaces rather than congruent communication. Use dependency injection. In this only we need to use dependency injection. Example, instead of user service directly creating MySQL database, inject the iDatabase interface. Instead of user service directly creating a MySQL database, inject an iDatabase interface. That is called as a dependency inversion principle. And the next topic will go to the this topic is completed, and this is a very important topic as solid principle. And next, the common design patterns. And the in design patterns, what exactly design patterns? In software engineering, design patterns are reusable and general solution to common problems that occur repeatedly when the designing application system. This is called as a reusable and general solution common problems that occur repeatedly when designing the application or system. This is called as design principles, and the common design principle is pattern. The use of factory pattern create objects without specifying the exact class. Creates the object without specifying the exact class. It means create the object without specifying exact class. Will create a objects but without specifying a particular class. That is called as a factory pattern. Use case. When object creation logic is complex or needs to be managed in a place. or needs to be managed in the place. When object creation logic is complex or needs to managed in the place. Example: a shape factory returns different shapes like circle, square based on the input. This is an example: public interface I shape using drag line I shape. This is a original like public shape factory I shape get shape circle get shape square. This is a factory design pattern. And next, singleton pattern. The purpose: ensure only one instance of class exists. Only one instance of class exists using class. Use when a single instance should be shared across the application. Using example configuration logging, the purpose will use singleton pattern. Singleton example is singleton is a logger class. Public class logger, public logger instance read only like object logger. Here we are using deadlocks logs and is written. The third one is dependency injection. Decouple objects creation and dependencies. The use cases of make unit test easier and improve maintainability. Use cases make unit test and improves the maintainability. Example: injecting the service into a constructor. Dependency injection will inject the service into the constructor. Will injecting here and will giving here and will implementing send a message. It's there in the message service class. .NET typically will used as a iMessage service and I implemented. Next, mediator pattern. Mediator pattern reduce the direct dependencies between components by having mediator handling communication. Reduce the direct dependencies between components by having using mediator handle communication. Use case useful in event driven application. Example: chart apps UI interaction. Example: using mediator in .NET. This exactly like in my previous project also I never used this mediator pattern, but it will reduce the direct dependencies between components and having a mediator handling purpose. Next, last one is CQRS command for a responsible segregation purpose. Separate the read queries and write commands. It useful to large scale application where reads and write has different performance need. Separating a get user query and create user command. Get user query in this will only get queries will return and get handler. Next, clean architectural DDD layers and aggregators and repository. The very next one is clean architectural organize code into the different layers, separate the concurrents to reduce the dependencies. Layers in the clean architectural entities, domain layer. It represents core business rules and logic. Entities, domain layer. Independent framework, external example. Examples of order customer products. These are the classes, domain classes. Use class, application use case, application layer. Implement the business rules using entities. Create order service. In this business logic, will implement the business logic. The infrastructure layer. infrastructure layer will using as a communicate database API logging. This will use as a infrastructure. Application layer present uh, class you application layer, infrastructure layer. In class will implement business logic. Infrastructure layer will implement like database logging APIs and these things. In presentation layer will using as a REST API UI API controller. HTTP post order created successfully. This is next domain driven driver design. Did you focus organized based code or domain and logic? Key concept aggregator. An aggregator is a group of related domain objects that should be triggered in a single unit. An aggregator is a group of related domain objects that should be treated as a single unit. One entity, one aggregate root ensure consistency and control access. Example: order is aggregator, root managing order item. Order item. Order is an aggregate, root managing order items. Decimal price. This is next repository. Repository as an abstract data access, providing to where to retrieve the persistent aggregators. Example: I repository interface. Next, last domain events. Events captured business action have occurred. Events captured business action have to occur. Example: order created that verify nodes part of the system. The summary: clean architectural organization, code into the layer separate concern. Structured tool based on the domain using aggregator, repository and events. Together the scalability and maintainability. This is an event sourcing. Message blocker. Message brokers are in asynchronous communication between microservice and distributed system like publish subscriber, PubSub, message QC. Message brokers are asynchronous communication between microservices or distributed system. Publish subscriber, PubSubs, message QC. RabbitMQ, Kafka, Azure Service Bus, Amazon. These are the popular message brokers. Service Bus, Azure Service Bus. These are the DDA layers and these are the event layers. That's all, my friends, and I think you have a some confusion between these two topics, but I will try to cover once again. Repeat this: event drivers, event driven architectural, event sourcing, and message broker. Like, what is a message broker? First we will discuss message broker. Message brokers we will use in message brokers in microservices applications or distributed systems. Like, it will use asynchronous communication asynchronous communication between microservices or distributed system using publish or subscriber or message QC mechanism. Popular message brokers are Azure Rabbit, Azure Service Bus, AWS SNS, Amazon SNS and SQS, Kafka, event streaming, uh, Rabbit MG, message QC. How it works? Producer publish an event. Broke the Kafka MD received. Consume Consumer listen the events. Event sourcing. um, Message brokers are enable scalable and asynchronous communication between services. Used microservices in real-time system and distributed application system. Next, sourcing. Event sourcing is a technique state changed or stored sequence of event instead of just persisting latest state. Event sourcing is a technique where state change are stored sequence events instead of just persisting the latest state. Event sourcing is a technique where state changed are stored the sequence of event instead of just persisting latest state. Event source as a technique. One more time I am repeating. It is a technique state changed or stored as a sequence of event instead of just persisting latest state. It is uh, it is a technique where the state change are stored and the sequence event. It is the state change are stored sequence of the events instead of just presenting the latest state. Key concept are a database where all stored databases are stored. Replacing events. The system is replacing the events. Immutable. Events are immutable and effect. These are the event source. And next we'll discuss this repository aggregator. This will discuss in next session because um, I have some doubt in that, like how to explain this thing. So that's the reason we'll discuss again. But I think you hope understand like message brokers and event sourcing. And the next one is practice refractor API follow clean architectural principle. This will discuss in the exercise session. In the next day 6 performance testing deployment benchmark. In this we are mainly focusing on profiling and benchmarks tools, caching optimization in memory, unit testing and integration, CI/CD pipelines, practice implementation with the CI/CD. We'll discuss this topic in this session only. This topic and anyway we'll do a separate video for that day 6 as a small 20 minutes video. That's all. Thank you all, and please subscribe this channel and like this channel. If you have any doubts and any queries, please feel free to reach me and I will help you. And if you are a subscribed member, this Sunday we are conducting a interview session. Please do a mock interview and perform well and prepare well. Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye bye.